So wanted to first, Vicky, get your thoughts about Initiative 65 and the Supreme Court's ruling last Friday to strike down the measure. And seems like at this point we're left without a medical marijuana program and also don't have a valid ballot initiative process. So your thoughts about that, and also how does the party feel about that?
Pretty much what I'm about to say is in line with what the Executive Committee of the Libertarian Party of Mississippi, what we were talking about as we discuss the issues. And it's really multi-layered. There's so many different pieces and parts to this. And we are noticing people, the outrage toward the Supreme Court, and then there's people who are directing their energy toward the legislature, and then they're focusing on, there's no more medical marijuana. So there's many different aspects to this. And, how do you really approach this to be, most effective for what we need right now? Yes, we have people hurting, and we currently have, laws in the books that say you cannot access this plant without without risk of going to jail. And that's harmful. And the Libertarian Party of Mississippi opposes prohibition. And we need a system in place that allows people to be able to live freely and make their own healthcare decisions for themselves. And Ballot Initiative 65 started that process. And unfortunately, we have issues with the Supreme Court that they pointed out. And personally, I'm thankful that the Supreme Court upheld, the rule of law. We have checks and balances for a reason. And in the process, if you read the writings that they put out there with it, they addressed the legislature. They've addressed them for years. This is something that has to be taken care of. And our energy needs to be focused on the legislature right now. There were a number of opportunities for this to happen. And you're hearing they overturn the will of the people. Well, let's go all the way back to 1992 when that initiative was originally voted on by the people. And if our legislature didn't take up the reins to fix the process for the will of the people to be fixed, they knew it was a problem, that is on the legislature.
Well, what would you like to see the legislature do at this point?
The legislature needs to fix the existing amendment that we have. Go back, whatever language needs to go in there to make it available for the citizens to be able to.
Are you talking about, excuse me, Vicky, you're talking about the ballot initiative, fix that, or fix the medical marijuana program? What are we talking about?
The process. For
the ballot initiative.
Section 273 of the state constitution.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it's a long process.
Yep.
And during that long process, we have to wait for other things to be fixed. It puts us 5-6 years behind if we're going to wait for a citizen-led ballot initiative for something like medical marijuana or any of our rights to be restored to us. So during that time frame also, the legislature does need to do the work of the people and go back to the table and to the drawing board and craft legislation that will help the citizens of Mississippi rather than continue to harm them.
Now, when we say help, do you mean more specifically, are you looking for the legislature to call a special session and draft a bill that would establish a medical marijuana program in Mississippi and send that to the governor for enactment? Is that what you'd like to see?
On a personal level, yes, I would like to see something of that nature start to happen. But there is a problem when you do that. When you do things rush and you rush things through, that ballot initiative 65 was very long. And we saw the Senate bill that was introduced as a possible protection measure. It was even longer. And it had so much language in there that made it impossible for people, practically impossible for people to be able to grow the product, sell the product, to get the licensure. And there was so much debate over, and then involving the Department of Agriculture and that so many layers of bureaucracy involved. It doesn't help the people. Okay,
so then let me just ask you directly, do you support Initiative 65 as written as the mechanism to establish a medical marijuana program in Mississippi, or do you support something different?
I never did support 65.
Okay, so you don't support that.
I did vote for it because it was an initiative that moved us in the right direction.
Yeah.
I never supported it.
All right, so what would you like to see different?
in
terms of establishing a medical marijuana program?
Well, if I could just do it very simply, I would just say marijuana should be available, cannabis should be available like tomatoes.
Okay.
Just go ahead and open it wide up. Someone wants to grow it in their backyard, there should be no punishment. Tell the federal government, we are a sovereign state, and we are going to allow our people to do what's best for them here.
Okay. So then, in that respect, you seek to just totally legalize marijuana, not just for medicinal purposes, but for any a purpose.
Allow it research to be open. Dr. David Allen, while I did not support his Initiative 77, he's absolutely right. We do need our doctors to be allowed to be able to research it. Why does the FDA or other individuals and groups say that marijuana doesn't help people? Because it's never been allowed to be studied.
Right.
The government prevents that from happening. That harms us also. So open it up for people to be allowed to study it, allow doctors, nurse practitioners, physicians to be able to have the ability to write a card, a prescription for it. So should our citizens of our state travel to another state and are using it where it's not wide open, that they can also be protected while they're leaving our borders.
Okay. All right. So just a wide open, free for all, no limitations on the number of stores. Is that do you support that? Just whoever wants to be in the medical marijuana or the marijuana business for the retail sale of marijuana should be able to do that without limitations.
It allows for the free market to open up, and it decreases the harm or risk.
Okay.
Risk of harm. I'm sorry.
But I'm not sure if that's a yes or no. That means, yes, you support no limitations. You would like to see no limitations on the number of stores.
Correct.
How about where it could be sold? Should those be licensed retailers? Or pharmacies should have the ability to sell them? Anybody, any retail store, convenience store, would you support that?
I would support if somebody's creating a product that has medicinal purposes to it. Now, then you're getting into the role of FDA, what's medical, what's medicinal. I started out saying there are so many layers to this.
Yeah.
And there are so many different bureaucracies involved. What it boils down to at the end of the day is, should I, as an individual, be able to make decisions for my own life as long as I am not causing significant risk of harm to another individual?
Okay. So I'm going to take that then that you would be fine with selling marijuana anywhere. Should there be any limitations on age?
When it comes to prohibition, when we talk about significant risk of harm, et cetera, I personally don't like limitations on age because children are going to get it anyway. But I'm willing to come to the table. We'll talk about it. Let's meet somewhere if we need to. But the fact of the matter is, people are hurting. People are being put in jail. They are being incarcerated. The brown and black communities are being incarcerated at a higher rate than the white communities.
Well, is that because they're black and brown, or is that the reason?
I'm not sure. I don't know the reason. I don't talk to the police officers who might, arrest them. And it's not just, the white officers who are arresting these individuals either, So, and then you hear people say, well, if you know the law, don't do the crime. But then those persons also, so which laws are you breaking behind your closed doors that you're asking other people to go ahead and be put to jail for? Are you willing to go to jail if you are suffering from cancer and you're taking chemotherapy? Would you want to go to jail for using marijuana because you're just trying to have some relief? Would you want that for yourself? Then why are you asking something like that of your neighbor, or PTSD, or whatever the reason is? Yeah.
Well, I think that kind of specifically hones in, does it not, on medicinal use of marijuana. So I hear that, and it sort of sounds like two different issues to me. Instead of one, I guess, just should we legalize marijuana, period, versus not, versus prohibit it. So, and then there's we ought to legalize it just for this purpose and under these restrictions. We got a break. You can hang with us?
Sure can.
All right, we got a break right here on the JT Show. We've got Vicky Rose, Chair of the Mississippi Libertarian Party. All right, so Vicky, just trying to get your thoughts on this Initiative 65 stuff, and really more just in general where the Libertarian Party stands with respect to marijuana, medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, legalization thereof. So we did have a question. This is from Amanda from Pike County, wants to know significant harm means what exactly?
And that's a really good question because it's not really a term that's used a whole lot and most people aren't familiar with it. Let's take, for example, you decide to go out for the evening and you're having some drinks with your friends and you get behind the wheel of the car and you drink a little bit too much. Now, everybody's body is different. Blood alcohol, level tests aren't necessarily accurate for everybody. But if you drink too much, you should be responsible for yourself to know that you are causing a significant risk of harm to others. Pocket nukes. I'm not going to, say, hey, we're pro Second Amendment, but everyone shouldn't have pocket nukes because you pop one off and far too many people are going to be hurt. But if you're sitting on your couch and you're smoking something, just for full disclosure, I have virgin lungs. Never smoked a thing a day in my life, but I support an individual's right to choose for themselves what they want to put into their body. And if they're not harming anybody else in the process, leave them alone. Just leave them alone.
Okay. Got it. All right. So this on the C-Spire text line on D601, state government sells liquor, right? Alcohol is as dangerous or more than marijuana. What you guys use that as kind of a reason, I guess, to support?
It's an example. It's just, we had prohibition, alcohol prohibition. It brought the gangs out and you had the black market. It didn't really work very well. We've had the war on, I prefer to say the war for drugs, for decades. What has it gotten us except more people harmed, more people hurt? I think we really need to reevaluate where we are as a society with regard to our mindset for that.
One of our listeners says cocaine is a pain reliever. Why not legalize that? Where do you guys stand? I mean, where do you draw the line on that? Just like a minute ago, you were talking about the Second Amendment and drawing the line on pocket nukes. I've had a discussion about that. I know you weighed in on that not too long ago, as did our friend Thomas in Greenwood, I think, who also would fashion himself as a fairly staunch libertarian. But so where do you stand on that? How do you guys figure out what should be limited and restricted by government and what should be allowed?
If I were stranded on an island by myself and I found a plant and I created it into something to use for myself because I wanted to, I'm not causing anybody else any harm. That's my absolute right to do it. You kind of look at that, island mentality, natural rights. Is there a hospital on that island or a doctor on that island to that you're going to have in order to have health care? No, but you should be able to find for yourself that ability, that opportunity to create for yourself that. If you want to use a doctor, find a doctor, you'll find a way to do it. You'll find a way to make that. That's your natural right to do that. But forcing somebody else that might come on that island to do it your way, because this is the way you've discovered that works for you, you're infringing upon their right.
Okay. So that's kind of the standard used to determine, I guess, what should be prohibited and what should be allowed. But, is that fair to say?
I'd guess so. That's kind of my example I use. I don't know how many people use that example.
It's a metaphor, so to speak, but you could certainly apply anything through that.
Right.
That filter, if you will. So that's interesting. All right. So I wanted to make sure I understand, what do you think the legislature should do right now? I know you kind of touched on that, but I wasn't sure I totally understood that, Vicky. What do you think they ought to do right now?
We need to have a special session to fix this initiative process. I'm not familiar. I haven't exactly looked at it myself, full disclosure, that, if they were to have that special session, can we then in November, how many months down the road does it have to be for the people to be able to have a vote on that if they have a special session?
I believe they'd have to call a special election because it has to be a statewide election because it's a constitutional amendment that requires statewide vote.
And that's what I figured it would be, considering, sometimes you might have a ballot referendum within a local government. And that's how I envisioned it. Let's have that special session. Let's fix the initiative process so we can move forward and allow people to have their voice. Okay.
Which, like I said, would require calling for a special statewide election, which costs a lot of money as well, right? We'd have to mobilize that set because we don't have that coming up until 2022.
Right.
So you'd like to see that happen before 2022? Because as it stands right now, it appears to me, and we had a professor from Ole Miss on the line yesterday discussing this, that we'd have to wait to 2022 to fix this problem with the signature collection process aligning with the old 5 congressional districts That has to go to the people on the ballot in a statewide ballot. That would be 2022 as is presently scheduled. And so no initiatives could be placed on the ballot until that's squared away, which would be 2023, the next statewide.
Well, we spend a lot of money on things that we shouldn't be spending money on in this state. And I'm going to step out on a limb here and say there's probably a lot of people who are going to say, let's spend some money on the right thing and fix this initiative process and have that statewide special election. All
right. So there's something called, is it the 74? Did I do that right? What's that about?
The 74 is a group of people who've gotten together. Many different organizations are coming together. There is actually going to be a protest in front of the Supreme Court next Tuesday, starting at 11 a.m. They said until we don't know when.
Okay.
But come out. There's going to be music and food also out there. They've got security, a peaceful protest asking for change to show that. And this isn't just about Ballot Initiative 65. This has turned into so much more than that in the last 7 days. There are people who are saying that they're ready to challenge elected officials who will not stand up for this and will not do what they need to make things right for people.
All right. So when's the date again on that?
Tuesday, the 25th of May.
All right. And you're going to the Capitol?
Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court. Okay.
Yes.
So you're mad at them?
I am not. This is just where they decided to put it.
I just want to know, are there folks within the Libertarian Party that are upset about the ruling? And because we've talked about that quite a bit the last 3 days, and that they sort of direct their grievance to the Supreme Court. Is that kind of your feeling?
That's been my
Or do you think they got it right or
general...
wrong? I guess.
I am thankful that the Supreme Court ruled the way they did.
Okay.
Because if they hadn't.
Yep.
That opens Pandora's box for them to be able to rule on our Constitution in other ways. And I'm looking at, there's currently state law that we have that, for example, Section 247 in the state constitution says there shall be fair elections and fair primaries. And we have some laws in the books that prevent third parties from being able to have access to the ballot.
Gotcha.
And if we're looking at Supreme Court issues, I want them to rule according to the Constitution.
Okay.
And I'm thankful for that.
Okay. All right. Tell me about this. We're going to shift gears a bit. The mayoral candidate in West Point that you're working with. I know that's where you're from, right? You reside in West Point.
Yes.
So tell us what's going on there.
Well, there's a candidate. Her name is Jennifer Harper. She put her name on the ballot as Jennifer Renee. She's a Constitution Party candidate. And yes, I do work with people from other parties. I work with independent candidates on the side as my personal endeavors. And Jennifer, she got on the ballot as a Constitution Party candidate. State law says that if you want to be on the ballot as a municipal candidate, that there has to be a county or a municipal executive committee to qualify you to be on the ballot.
Okay.
Now, if I were to run for a state office or if I were to run for a county-wide office and there was not a county executive committee, state law says that the state party may qualify me as a candidate. I don't have to have a county. They can qualify me as a temporary executive committee. That is a burden for small parties. And most people have never even heard of the Constitution Party. We have a hard time in the Libertarian Party, people having, well, what are you? I don't know anything about you. And they have their views about us that aren't necessarily accurate.
Yeah.
And so Jennifer is running a Constitution Party. So the law says there has to be a candidate, there has to be 30 days before the election qualifying period to form a municipal party. That's a burden for her. So she got on the ballot, and there's more. I can talk about this in a minute.
Yeah, we're going to take a break right here. We'll have you back after the break to finish that discussion. I want to give you a chance on that. Vicky Rose, Chair of the Libertarian Party in Mississippi, is our guest. All right, so continue that discussion, Vicky, please, about the situation with the mayoral candidate of West Point.
Well, she's not considered a candidate any longer because they removed her from the ballot without her due process rights. The Municipal Election Commission actually never had a hearing like they were supposed to for her. They never got her. They gave her a chance to address them after they kicked her off the ballot. So that means they really didn't operate in their capacity as a Municipal Election Commission. They operated according to case law. They operate in their personal capacities. we have that going for her. But also there was a case in 1989, U versus the San Francisco Central Democratic Committee, where the United States Supreme Court ruled that a state may not tell a state executive committee through their laws, through their code and statutes, how they are to create and be function. And actually, within that case, they struck down the California law that said that you are required to have a county-level executive committee. Mississippi has had this requirement on in its books since the 1970s. It has never been addressed, and it is this exact scenario, the requirement of municipal and a county-level executive committee, that is preventing her from being on the ballot. The Supreme Court ruled that this violates her First Amendment rights and her 14th Amendment rights, and she is facing a lot of struggle. I mean, all three of the circuit court judges for the Clay County Circuit Court recused themselves of her request for an expedited injunction to force to the Municipal Election Commission to put her back on the ballot. The election is June 8th, and she's still not back on the ballot.
Well, do you think there's like some deliberate nefarious activity going here where they're trying to keep her off the ballot?
That's a very good question, because she stood up. She did a press conference on Tuesday, April 12th, I believe it was, challenging the Democrat primary winner to a debate. When we announced, within an hour of announcing that she was having the press conference, she received a strange phone call from someone saying that someone was going to be challenging, another candidate was going to be challenging her to get off the ballot. Well, there's only two candidates, the Democrat candidate and the independent candidate, and the Democrat candidate denies having done this, and the Democrat Executive Committee is apparently the one who challenged her, but she never got to face her accusers. She never got anything in writing stating who the petitioner was to get her off the ballot.
What's the next move for her?
Right now, she's just trying to get the circuit court to do their work. The case was referred to the state Supreme Court. They gave her another judge, and now we're waiting on Kim Hood to actually set a date, and she hasn't set a date yet.
Well, I would assume that her lawyers are expressing their
she's not
disapproval.
As a third party candidate, she doesn't have a lot of money. The third party doesn't have the money to have a lawyer. All she did was just file pro se, a brief asking for an emergency injunction, because that's all she knew to do. But at this point, what do you do when you're a third party candidate? You want to give the people an option on the ballot. Mm-hmm. That's why she wanted to run. And the Municipal Election Commission said, well, you can just run as an independent. You could have just run as a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. Mm-hmm. I'm not an independent. And her First Amendment rights to freedom of association is what should be protected. And she stood before that Municipal Election Commission, and she said to them, you need to uphold your oath to the Constitution of Mississippi and the United States Constitution. And one of them said, we didn't take an oath to uphold the Constitution. We're only supposed to follow the state statutes. And another commissioner said, well, we're afraid that if we do that, we're going to be prosecuted.
You got that on video? Does somebody have that?
I do.
And do you have any intention with that piece of information?
We have no idea what to do with it.
Interesting. I'm a little surprised, though, that the party, the Constitution Party, would not have some attorneys available to assist her in that respect.
And they're trying. They're trying, and it's a struggle.
Yeah. Well, is this something the Libertarian Party would step in and provide some sort of legal aid for?
We might consider it. We haven't been asked, but all a person can do is ask.
Well, if what you're saying is true with respect to, you said a member of the Election Commission, right, was the one who said that I didn't swear an oath. And I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if they make elections commissioners.
It's not true. It's actually in the state constitution where their oath is in the Constitution. You can read it in the Constitution, and it says they take an oath to the state and U.S.
Well, like I said, if you've got empirical evidence of that statement in the form of a video, that sounds like a pretty powerful argument. We'll be checking in to see what happens on that. That's an interesting bit of news there. Vicky, appreciate you coming on the show today. Thanks a lot. Yeah, we'll talk soon. Vicky Rose, Chair of the Mississippi Libertarian Party, has been our